morning. How is everybody doing today?
Great. Good.
Welcome to February, almost halfway over, which is crazy. So very excited. If you're here for the first time, if you wouldn't mind standing up and having the first time invited you stand up, that we can introduce you, that would be great.
Jeez. Okay, so a lot of you guys know Tanya already, but for those of you that don't, this is Tanya Mulry.
Hi, Tanya!
She owns Steamworks Center, which is a lot of entrepreneurs. And she's getting this.
Awesome. Very, very, very excited. So we've got a lot of things. Wade had another associate pass to secure their life license yesterday, which is a very, very good thing. Wade is laughing. He's like, so he's got a guy named Justin that's done with the Towers quiz, ready to take his test, and he's like, I got a 90% recruiting my folks just get licensed right now. So number 3 in the country right now in the securities, the first 3-month blitz for below the level of RVP, Mr. Wade Spolsky. So that's a very, we like top 10 on that type of stuff. So that's a very, very, very good thing. We are 6th in the country right this second. So we got some work to do and some good things that are happening. So we have about almost $1 million that hasn't hit yet, and so that would be kind of a good thing. So congratulations, team. Sorry to get things moving. So this morning, we're gonna move through entrepreneur training, right? It's really about kind of engaging. We use our Saturdays as an opportunity to introduce ideas, to start practicing them, to really kind of the building blocks of success, right? And so it's always fun. I give this story kind of where we are as an organization is the next 90 days is key. 90 days from right now, starting by May 1st, our goal is to be running 3 Saturday trainings at the same time, right? Right now, if you think about the arc of this room, someone who's never been to a Saturday morning, just started their hours and quizzes, someone who passed their life test, who's getting ready to kind of cover some appointments, some people that are fully licensed, there are 3 major groups inside this room right now. And so we're going to spend an hour and a half talking and training and working, and it's really hard to focus and hit every person, every category in the room at the exact same time. Now, so for the brand new people, this is going to be an exposure where you're like, okay, there's a lot of support. For the people that are that understand that there's a lot of support but aren't masters at it, that's kind of the sweet spot of this because we're going to use this as training. And the people that are licensed and know what's going on, you should be using this as an opportunity of how do you introduce these concepts to people and use it as a training. But 90 days from now, ideally, we've got 3 different classes, 3 different training rooms that are going on. So brand new people are coming in and we're using the hour and a half for them. For the folks that are in the process of developing the presentation skills, we're using this time for them. And for the folks that have the presentation skills down and they're developing their business acumen and their understanding of growing entrepreneurs, we're able to leverage and target that as a training. All right. The dilemma is we need more people that can lead the different classes and the different trainings in order to actually do that. And so over these next 90 days, it's going to come a little too fast. It's going to come a little too slow, and it's going to come just right? We got Goldilocks in this room and the 3 bears, but understand that the goal, if 90 days from now we're running the trainings the same way, we dramatically screwed up, right? We can't do this and grow at scale. We can't because we have to collapse timeframes. We have to use the time we have as effectively as we possibly can. None of this is wasted time, but none of this is as effective as it can be if we can target trade. Does that make sense? No. And so my request for the people that are new, listen fast. For the folks that are veterans, increase your skills. Get better at put off the time, put off the field so that we have more people in front that can say, here, I'm going to scoop up this group and we're going to go and we're going to move the ball over here. Right? That allows us to kind of put these things together. Does that make sense? Because we're at a really, 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 really fun time. There are some incredible things that are coming. And I believe that we're really figuring, I think Robin and I are genuinely figuring out our partnership as to how our different skill sets can start to work and really grow this. We've got some very, very unique opportunities. You know, I use this as my 5-minute commercial to kind of get you up to speed. So we've locked in the crossover 401k. So there's about 1,200 people in the next 90 days we're going to need to talk to. So we need more licenses. The corporate 529 plan. For those of you guys that don't know, in terms of the conversation, is that we're working with Invesco right now to roll out essentially a corporate 529 that allows us to go into any corporation, any organization, and set up a 529 plan that the corporation doesn't have to pay for the onboarding, they don't have to pay for the technology. Their payroll deduction works with the investment company to be able to do it. And any corporation with over 250 employees, the employees can contribute without having to pay a sales charge. And so we're working on this, and you know, a week ago we were at about a 30% likelihood of being able to get it onboarded, and I'd say right now we're sitting at about 70. And we'll know in the next 10 days whether or not we can roll this out. Probably May 1st is what we think we're gonna get pulled off. So who knows? We'll see. Right? It's bob and weave. It's totally gonna happen. Then it's never gonna happen, and all sorts of things. But if we do this, this is a competitive advantage for our organization because it won't be rolled out to Primerica. It'll be baited with us. It'll be baited with us for over a year. And we will be able to design it exactly the way we want to, which is very fun. And so as more details come, and as if we pull this off, this is a very, very fun thing because it allows us, you know, and Rob was talking about last week, right, is the benefit of this is, right, you've got kids, right? And so a 529 plan, you know, you pay 3.5% for a sales charge for this, you know, for the investment and stuff, and the money grows tax-free for college and all sorts of stuff. Well, one, lots of people don't know about it. But we can go into a corporation and we can set it up to where they can have the exact same investment with us, or they can have the exact and pay a sales charge, or run it through the company and have the exact same one and not pay a sales charge. Well, if you think about a compound effect of 3% on every contribution over a 5, 10, 12-year period of time, that becomes real money, right, in terms of what's going on. So now imagine we're sitting with a client, we're sitting with your cousin, who's best friends with the HR director of Princess Cruises. Princess Cruises headquarters is right here. Princess Cruises has 1,000 employees, and Princess Cruises doesn't have a corporate 529 plan, and no one's going to talk to them. And we're talking to the best friend of the HR director, and we're like, hey, we have 2 choices. We can set up this 529 plan for you and your kids. Oh, your parents can contribute, you know, $50,000, and it can cost you a couple $1,000s for this, or you can introduce us to the HR director and we can set this up, roll it out. It doesn't cost Princess Cruises a dime. It becomes an asset for Princess Cruises to say, look, we put this together for your employees, and the moment we get this situated, we can roll any of your other monies from your 529 plans in without any sales charge, and it can go forward. We don't become the marketers of it. We become the communication people of it, and our clients have lots of relationships with lots of HR directors and human resources and COOs and business owners, and it gives us an opportunity to walk in and make that a reality. Does that make sense? Now, the really secondary cool thing about this is we get to set up the list of brokers that are linked to it. And so it's a finite list. So all of our securities licensed people within the organization will be on a drop down, which means if they're affiliated with Primerica, but they're not affiliated with us, they can't write it. So someone in Nebraska they've got a Princess Cruises office in Nebraska, and someone from Primerica is like, oh, we can set this up. They go on, their name ain't on it. It's us. It's look, I like competitive advantages. Those are the things we're working on. Those are the opportunities. When we talk about the fact we don't have enough people, we need more licenses, we have the ability to put this, that's what this is about. Those are the types of things that are here. So we'll learn more and stuff like that, but
yeah.
these are fun things. We said these were things that were going to happen. We didn't know what the things were, but we're like, cool things are going to happen. These are the cool things that are going to happen. So, y'all excited?
Yeah.
All right. So, what we're going to do, what we've been working on over the last little bit is what we call, our getting started, right? Our business is about storytelling. It's about taking somebody who has ambition, who wants to do something, and say, here's an opportunity. Have them understand the opportunity, which is step one of the equation. And then once they understand the opportunity, being able to help them navigate an experience they've never gone through, right? We have a tendency to forget the support that we got in our lives, right? In terms of, if you think about in school, if you think about as a kid, right? Like right now, the twins are sick and all over the place and tired and sleeping through the, and it's annoying. Like being a parent's kind of annoying most of the time. So he's like, wow, you're selling me the dream. No, it is. Like you gotta go in with your eyes wide open now. It's fun, it's fulfilling, and at 3 o'clock in the morning when your kid's sitting up, screaming, that's a little annoying when it's every night. But we're patient and as patient as we can be, and we help them down. But guess what? You were annoying as a baby too. You were annoying. Some of you still are babies, right? No, you were annoying, right? You needed help. We all needed help in every phase of our life, whether it was school, whether it was business, where it is. We have a tendency to forget. We have a tendency to believe we did it ourselves. And that's just not true. So what we wanted to do is say, how do we get really good at helping people know what their next steps are, what the following steps and how things play together? Because if we understand what it is we're doing and why, we have a lot easier time actually following through and making that happen, which is how we get an 80 and 90% recruit to code ratio. Wade's team knows, here are the things I need to do to take and pass these tests. Here's what I need to do to get these licenses. Right? That stuff really works. And so we want to do that. So what we're going to do is get into groups. And so how many of you feel pretty confident about this? Raise your hand if you feel pretty confident about being able to, raise your hand. The four, being able to know what all the boxes are. Okay, raise your hand if you know. Okay, so we have 4 team captains. Okay, so what we want to do is, Cindy, you're there, Wade, you're there, Sue, you're here, and Dawn, you're here. And now, if you drove in the car with the person, you can't be in their group. And if you drove in the car with somebody, you can't be in the same group that they're in. And the only one that I know is that Tanya's going to be with Sue. Everything else, y'all are responsible. Get up, get into your groups for a second. I'll give instructions, please. So Cindy, you're staying there. You're the team leader.
Okay.
You're the team leader.
You're staying here.
All right.
Tanya's coming
So
over
who will be
there.
the last person to pick for the dodgeball?
This is perfect. You're going somewhere else here. We can just- Oh, I was gonna have you turn around there.
So Arsen's coming up here.
Here. Yay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have
Yes, yeah. He's gonna pass
these.
Cool.
You sure?
Ah!
Take this one.
He's gonna pass it.
A little ninja right there.
Pass it.
Here we go.
He's got it.
I'm like
Oh, we don't have that. That's okay. It's up.
And then I have more. I have those.
That's okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll chat it up there anyway, Brett.
I know. But that way people- So here's what we want to do. The person that knows it the best, right? The first thing we're gonna do.
That's just joking.
Oh yeah, hide the hidden water is going to help. So the person that knows it the best, the team captain, is going to do it first. Now the goal is to tell the story the best you possibly can. We're not looking for perfection. This is the introduction of, right? And so we're going to walk through that first part of it. be able to explain it the best way you would know how to explain it based on what we've done. And then we'll end up rotating and doing a variety of different things, but we want to start with this first and then we're going to talk about it. Yes.
Are we doing all 4 quadrants or you want to
Yes,
start?
all four, yeah, walk through this, the top layer of what you would do, right, in terms of that.
Okay. Bob, you seem there, go ahead. All right, so, Bob. All right. So, quadrant 1. All right, so basically what's going to happen in the next 6 months, what I'm going to do now is we're going to run 4 different quadrants. Over the 6 months, hopefully all these things. Okay, so the first quadrant is here, the second quadrant is here, the fourth quadrant is here, the fourth quadrant is here. Okay? Now, in order for us to get you paid, we have to do that. Okay, so we're going to start with your first license, right? We're going to do a couple things. One is get the people started to organize yourself on the platform. 2 is get the people going. And also, it's being paid once we set up the platform. Okay? So, in order to get your life insurance license, you can't just do it for hours and you have to do it for business. Have both of you been around? Have you been around already? I think. I'm sorry? You started, okay. Have you downloaded the Chrome extension? Okay. So, for your hours, are you doing life only or are you doing life only? Life only, okay. So you need to have.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Y'all excited?
Yeah.
Not everyone started. So for those of you who didn't start, I'm not talking to you. For any sensitive people in the room, for those of you that have started, we're going to take a step and we're going to take a step back and go. And this is why we do this, right? Because we want to go through. Question. What's the first, right, when you're sitting down and having this conversation, what's the first thing that we're talking about? No.
Getting started.
Getting started. What do we? So we're getting started. But what's the? How do we lay this out? How is this delivered?
The 6 month plan was going to happen in the next 6 months.
Okay. Then what?
Then we start talking about the quadrant 1, the first license, and basically with that.
Okay. No.
We're excited that you said that you're ready to join.
Okay.
Would you like to see how I see success in the next 6 months?
Right. So we want to define. You want to see how we get right. We want to ask the engagement question. Right. Remember, this is about moving people through that process. You guys see how I define success over the next 6 months for us. Right. You're setting the stage. What is someone going to say?
Sure.
Hopefully, yes, because you're actually there. But for those of you, this is important because otherwise what happens is we have a tendency of telling people what they're going to do before they've decided they actually want to do it. Okay? So step 1. Now, are we talking about item 1 and then hitting box 1? No. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. Right? Therefore, right? So would you like to know how I define success over the first 6 months? Yeah. So what we want to do is we're going to get you licensed, right? We're going to make sure the first one's done, get you the next, right? We're going to put you through what we call rookie camp. Our number 1 job is to find $200,000 in assets and have them waiting for you. We're going to, right? We go, right? At our jobs, our goal is to be able to get you a raise, a promotion, or serious recognition. And ultimately, we're going to put 3 to 5 people on your team so that you'll be building and start building and helping us with this growth. These are the things we want to get done over the next 6 months. Now, when it comes to getting you licensed, my job is to help you through this process as quickly and as easily as possible. We put a lot of systems in place to make that happen. That make sense?
Yeah.
So we're talking about it, asking the engagement question. We're highlighting the 4 components as to where it goes. We're giving someone the opportunity to, right? So what happens is I'm not sitting down going, we've got this quadrant. We're sitting down and saying, look, you want to know what success is? Yeah. At the end of the day, right, the first thing we need to do is we want to get you your first license and on step for the next one.
So are you not seeing us actually sitting down on this piece of paper?
No.
A blank piece of paper.
Blank piece of paper. This is what it will look like when you've left. We're using this as a teaching tool right now for the folks that are going in.
Okay.
But you're not, this isn't a presentation, this is a conversation. You're going to hear me, right? I've been saying this for 20 years. You're going to hear me now more than ever before. We will drill this in. We are professional conversation havers. We are not professional presentation havers, right? It's a relationship that we've got to go through that process. Does that make sense? Right? So, but when you're done, it's going to look handwritten, but like this. So someone's going to go, am I going to keep this? And you're like, sure. And they're going to walk away with this piece of paper. Okay? Right? But we go and we talk, we hit the highlights, and then go in. That makes sense? So I didn't want you to have to practice this. You're more than invited to grab a piece of paper, but reference as though it's a blank, right? So the folks can go through it. This is, right, so.
And I'm glad you raised that question, Wade, because a lot of times when we have a tool like that, someone thinks of it sort of like a calculator in school these days, where you're like, why does my kid have to learn standard division when they're always going to have their phone with them, right? So a lot of folks might, if they thought this was going to be with them, think, why do I have to memorize this? Why do I have to know it like the back of my hand if it's going to be sitting in front of me and I just have to describe it, right? Or talk about it. So hopefully that clarifies for folks. You can't have a conversation about the material until you have the material like the back of your hand, right? That allows you to then move it to a conversation. And when you're going to have a blank piece of paper in front of you, you're going to have to be able to fill it in through that conversation. So this isn't an exercise in futility because it's going to be next to you at all times. And I think that's a really important point.
So it'd be good if we knew how to write it out.
Very good.
Yes.
And so, and we'll use any tool as it is, right? If you have it down to where you can write it out, grab a piece of paper, we've got them and run it through. That's the best way. I'm not sure where everyone is, right? There's a reference point that I'm starting to build around, right? And it's this reference point of how many of you know people who have been raised in a house that speaks Spanish, where the people speak to their kids in Spanish, but they allow their children to speak back to them in English. Right? Now you're like, not my house, right? But why? What happens when that happens? And when their entire life they answered in English. By the time they're 21, can they speak Spanish? No. Do they understand it? Yeah. See, there's a lot of people in this room that understand access that can't speak it. Right? I understand Spanish and I can speak it well enough to get in trouble and get out of trouble, well enough to get to a restaurant, well enough to have a conversation with a 2-year-old, but I can't have philosophical conversations and coaching conversations with my twins the way I have had them in English with my older boys. So I understand Spanish and I can clumsily put it together, but I am not fluent in Spanish. My goal is we have to get immersed in that, right? Part of this translation that we've got to do here, most of you understand access. When it's explained, you're like, I totally get it. Just like someone who totally understands Spanish. And then you're like, okay, well, tell me a story in Spanish, and they're looking at you like, well, I don't speak Spanish. There's a disconnect between understanding and being able to formulate the words to it. That's what this is going to be about. We've got to, and so, and I think that some of the friction points for some of us to attack the skill level is because we understand it when someone explains it, we think we've actually mastered it. Because we're like, I'm explaining it, you're like, yep, totally got it, walk out, we're like, you're doing it, you're like, That's not a bad thing, that's a recognition of moment. And so we want to immerse and make this next level of transition. So if you know it, Cindy, do not use this piece of paper because you've got it down. Grab it, I'll give you a blank piece of paper. If you have the mastery level, you don't need the piece of paper. I got a blank piece of paper. I have limited faith that most of us actually think and speak access at this point. And that's the transition that we're trying to get done. Does that make sense? So.
Yeah, and part of that is middle ground, right? So if you know part of it, cover up the other part, right? This is a process. It's not an all or nothing in training, you know? So you might know, the quadrants, right? You use it as a mixture.
Okay, so let's start over.
It is hard though.
So, would you guys like to know how I define success for us? Okay, so Basically, what's gonna happen is, the first thing we're gonna do is
Your breath safety.
once I have your license, we're gonna run a rookie, which is we're gonna have $200,000 assets waiting for our securities license, so that your business runs. Then what's happening, we're running through entrepreneurial training, we're gonna shoot for a raise, promotion, or serious recognition in the next 6 months at your current job, right? What are you doing for work right now?
That's right. That's right.
Supervisor.
Yes.
Okay, so what's the
That
next,
is-
what's the next step up for you?
We're on the next step.
Okay,
right?
cool. And is
So-
there a certain set number of criteria that have to happen, like that, or is it someone just-
To learn how to give this conversation is
Great, awesome. So we're gonna shoot for a raise, a promotion, or serious recognition
So
from
now
where you are to that
let's
point
get
in 6
to
months. And what we wanna do is also wait to about 45 people in the office.
the, now we're saying, how would
We
you,
wanna make sure we have a point.
this is what you prefer, and I'm ready to have, getting to this conversation. How would you live by that?
So, let's talk about the first thing we're doing is the first license, the hours of first. We were talking about the
And so
new,
one
sign
of
up
the
you
things
can
that
pass, right?
I'm trying to do,
You gotta do 32 hours, 20 for the life,
if
12
I
for the
own,
death.
if I have a
Okay.
conversation,
The Chrome
you
extension.
don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. When I only talk about first ones, what are you gonna spend your time on?
You mean Brett? Oh, okay. Oh, you're joking around. All right, so there's a Chrome extension, that, I can email to you.
By setting
Are
it
you a
up,
Mac person or a PC?
let's talk about.
You use Chrome?
You know,
Okay. So there's an actual
what are you
extension.
doing with,
I can email it to you. Actually, I can do it right now.
Like, yeah, I'm like, okay,
But what you do is if you install the Chrome extension, what will happen is that you can start your cache running, and then you just turn on the Chrome extension to refresh your screen. You find-
is that what we're gonna do? Because we're gonna pick up at least $2,000 now.
He actually doesn't have a Chrome.
And I wanted to make sure that.
Oh, you do? I'll give you
For
the.
For once your license. One of the things we're gonna do is look, for you to really be a part of this, we wanna make you successful. You're gonna see, right, recognition, blah, 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 at your job. And the fourth thing is, we gotta build the people in the corner. We're gonna put 3 to 5 people on your team. And that's a team, we're a team. We believe that everybody is about being on our team.
And then if you
Now,
say yes, then.
Those are our main findings for success for you over the next 6 months. So let me talk a little bit more about what is that licensing thing? What do we actually want to accomplish in the next 6 months? The first thing is, we're gonna make sure that you have right? Now, I talked about 200,000 assets, right? Or what is 200,000 assets? How do we? There's recognition, how? Team. If we can accomplish these 4 things, focused on one plan, this for me is real successful. That's the most I trust. It's not that you can't.
I mean,
Why? Yes. Well, there's 2 things if you show up with this. One, you're wondering what's coming next. But 2, it feels to that person like you something you've been practicing, something that is a robot part of the program. It doesn't feel like it's coming from an authentic sense of you. Now, we know you have to learn the content, but how you share that, right? What's you and your personality. And the delivery, right? It's back to FNA is the word, and how you deliver it. Initially, right, delivery wasn't one that is not what we call.
Yeah, sorry, I got this.
We
You
want.
got you do have to.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was giving you better.
Yeah.
Mission
Good talk, yeah. Here's where we're starting, here's where we're ending. And now I'm gonna fill in the middle.
They're already engaged, they already know what's up. And so they're like, oh, now.
Yes, you see, right? I'm giving you the big picture, right? These four things, there's the big picture. And now let's drill down. Because otherwise,
Do we have?
I'm waiting for the end of the story and I'm not.
That's how long
In
it's
between.
Usually something Robert doing header, so they always have to go to give them advice the whole way of the year. So it's like when you see them, to let them know that it's a process. It's easier to help them.
Yes, that's part of it. That's a big part of it. The other part of it is that when we grow up, other than in school and essays, which is part of it, I'll talk about your background, but we're taught to tell stories from the beginning to the end. And so we're readable from the beginning. So we're constantly waiting for the end. What's the big end? What's gonna happen? What's the big conclusion? Right? We're literally taught that. And so it makes sense that we instinctually tell a story to kids. And the top and bottom of the conversation is about because Brett and I were talking about and Brett recognized that the way that I tell a story is I lay out the high levels and then I go back to the and what you realize is by casting a vision, not only are people ready to hear
So, first one, would you like to know how
and not what happens next, they're inspired, excited to hear the details. Because if I go on the details,
If we accomplish that,
when you finally get to the inspired
we
end,
find that success. Yes, great.
Might have
Here's how we do that individually.
and it's because when you write
Do
on
this,
this,
then you
you
say,
remember in
does that sound good?
school writing
Yes,
a
great.
five-paragraph essay.
Yes, correct. That's the computer. Let's start.
The first paragraph was your introduction, and it gave the reader
Like, not messing me up, saying you don't have it. I was like, what? Then I got
Right?
back.
It was, here's my introduction, here's a very brief of the supporting points, and here's my conclusion. And then I went into more detail on each of my supporting
Well,
points,
and
and then
I
I
would have already
restated
done
it.
this with you when you already had your conversation.
We were actually taught to write these way.
Yes.
It lost.
So I know. And I said, who's your upline? He's like, I was got Sears. And I was confused because I didn't know it was messing with me.
And then probably to the end.
All right.
You
So that
want
actually
to
is a
think
good.
about writing your lines.
So you're gonna give, what if, because
So we were taught in law school. Build the vision,
Well, no, like to know what I
but build the
would you like to know what I would do?
the first paragraph.
so we actually.
Tell the judge the conclusion you want
So
the
that you know,
judge to come to.
license what you can,
By
just
the
the
time you're
headers.
done,
They
you
wrote
need
it
to
Question
say,
two is
right.
how you make this.
So our
Introduction.
introduction and our conclusion are in the first paragraph. And then you filled it in. So for example, children eat sugar in the morning, have a crash. I wanted to know that children eat sugar.
First license.
So my opening paragraph, today, all white is retired.
Would you like to know what?
Would you like to know
Kids
what-
are on average, sugar in our body lasts for 3 hours and then causes us to crash. And that's what another thing that I would say, here are children are tired of lunchtime because they're eating sugar. And that would be my first paragraph.
Do that for you.
And then I would say my first paragraph, which is children are eating more sugar. And then my next paragraph would go into 4 sentences that prove that. Right? Lady National shows it, sugar cereal, sales are up, right? I would need to support that one. And my second paragraph, my second point, my third paragraph would support my third one. And then I would say,
I know, that's what he's like, I got the spurt.
here's why what I told you was gonna be true is true.
So That's
So that's what it's like.
So the impact on what you
Yes, and that way, the judge reads something, only knows where I'm going. By introducing that conversation, the person you're trying to already knows the end date. And then you get to
I think that's
Or you get.
I think it's a great idea.
This is the main part from the insurance. You get asked, well, look, we accomplish these things over 6 months.
There's things that are going on in people's cycles that are really relevant.
Right, there's your tie down after you have the top of the question.
And that is right.
No, that's
here.
that's there, right? So now you like, look, the first 6 months, you want to get you first, like, right? You want to get you $200,000 assets, right? Waiting for everyone wants you to be rich. That's where we're going to you're always trying to have. So you know,
There's 3 considerations you want to do. Second, have to do there's the goal before
now, the way to do that, and get you licensed, it's the hours.
Third, second, do is tax.
Right? That's what they can do is business like doing it's necessary to get through that process.
The second question that I don't have is,
Then once we get
we accomplish this in the next 6 months, we're careful bit about that.
we're gonna be profitable and we're gonna lock them in. Right? Right, through that scenario. Or locking it out, sorry, not the profit and then locking it out, right, through that process, right? And then it's right, support system and grow with macro, right? And then
Big picture, micro, little picture.
You know, and ultimately what we call being a player, so let's go out and tell the story on your own and create profit. That's what we're set for to get done to make that happen. Any questions about what we're fighting for and how we're gonna make this happen? So the first thing we gotta do is, did you
Actually.
So this is saying, so to what I'm hearing, because
The third one is, do you have any questions?
Oscar other than fixing stuff. So the top is,
you wanna know what I?
Right, you wanna know
what I think.
what I think success looks like in the next 6 months. Then you do, right, and then the sub-hook is,
If we accomplish it for you, is that something we want to be a worthwhile investment time?
Or just you put around the page.
now, what, right, do you want to the reason is what it is, how what, right, what it means and how it works, is each time that one says yes, they are recreating themselves. Well, it's about getting them committed to the plan.
Just hand
So
it.
by saying yes, by putting
There are no.
acknowledging.
Yeah, so there, yeah, so for you, yes.
No,
Right.
no, but I actually don't, I don't know.
What I accept.
So,
By saying yes,
Um,
we define them,
so,
they're now
So,
committed to hiring.
that's not actually fleshed out. Ross.
Yes.
Yeah, when someone's on Ross.
Yes, this is like
What
real
are
shit.
the things in Ross?
No.
Nice.
Oh, so your hours are.
So that's the first, right? And so they have to say yes.
And the impact. So,
If they say
what's
no,
gonna happen is, like, our number one job.
Right, so now they do this. Now you're like, okay, let me talk about what. I divided it into two things.
Because it's got.
Impact for other people or impact for them?
The second significance. So we could accomplish
Why
this
they're
first
asking.
thing.
Well, and that's when we get doing impact stories, so you can tell, I can tell that you know.
Yes, now I'm dividing my time for the next 6 months.
Well,
Okay, well, let me talk about
Oh,
how
right,
you
right,
can
how
spend
it's
your
working for you,
time
right?
to accomplish it.
they're not. Like, look,
And now I'm
one of
committed
the-
to
one of
doing
the
it
best
now,
universities-
right? Now, after you've gone through, you can start
We better move on this, obviously, okay.
is this something that's, is this something that you know,
Yes.
that is essentially what we do.
I don't want to be like that. I want to be what I want to be. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Uh,
Now we
this
have,
is about.
right?
It's like the final.
No, I get it. I get it.
Right?
Oh, I see.
Now I'm getting to say yes. Now, the moment you say yes,
And that's what I get.
you're now, I can predict my yeah. It's not That's
All right.
Your laptop out, let's have this start right.
That's good. So
Wanna try it?
actually, it's like we talk about.
Yeah, I have a.
See the different.
This is the first one.
What you can do is see on the balcony, like, okay, so if
Then your license
Yeah.
So remember, so I went through all of this. to get to
You have the comment section. Do you have the comment section? Oh, wait, tell them you're not. Yes. I was like, I can't get out of the head.
Right.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's try. Who wants to go first? Good. I'm gonna try. Yeah.
No, that's what
So this just might transfer outside of the. Well, you're already in a profession. How that's very in business. We would help you make.
I don't know.
Get ahead in that business also.
Talk about that.
So we're gonna go through a whole series of trainings and.
Just said
There's gonna be, you're gonna start to build out a team that's gonna be able to help
Yeah. Because those things are all valid.
There's a lot of your vocabulary. Explain it, so challenge.
Yes, oh, yeah. Yeah. So I instead of saying.
No, I just wrote it down there when I peeked and I was like, I don't even know what to say there.
Yeah.
So can I ask, do we say wellness team sounds?
All right. All right, so we're doing just the macro, just the first, ask the first question, and just the macro.
So cool to know. So right now, team, all licensed,
we're gonna have
other business, and you're starting to. I mean, that sounds great.
So we want to.
Now I can either stop there.
We wanna work on these, right? Then after that,
Do you
we're
wanna
gonna go.
try this part, just that part? It's the time of them, you say yes to say. Yes, I.
Perfect. Okay, so, the only thing I would say is that I would emphasize, we talk about unpredictable fate. The concept is, we're gonna teach you skills here.
As you see, 10 miles down the road, I don't
So that can only just.
Right.
So we
Well, I'm not-
that's so easy. So your confidence,
It's all practice.
your nervous about that. Not just that you can catch it. Very nervous.
I talk about. So, no, yeah, but yeah. Well, we, yeah.
But I got on the ride, and then at the end, so like that was my
If you have 100 people,
yeah, it's nervous and you're getting on the ride.
you're asking 100 people. Only few is what they make, right? We want all of our people to do as many as possible. The only way to do that is to build their skills to do a job. You are supplying. Otherwise, what happens is your job. That's the word. Always waiting.
Yeah, that's what it's always. That's the most tired.
If we accomplish this within every 6 months, they have a fully professional license and they can make as much money as they can. Remember, you cannot have a that's too high.
And then if they just say no for whatever reason, you're like,
Solar. Bigger than $1 billion.
No, I don't even.
I wanted to say it's
So the key was that it's a good investment.
Yeah. Okay, now let's practice the, so we did a good job of the first transition. There's 3 questions, remember? So the second question, complete the macro, then what else?
Just on the way to the next steps.
For things.
No, this is actually the next one.
Yeah, we
Oh,
can-
so
If you can
you're
accomplish
gonna
those
have
4
your first
tasks within
license
6
and
months, could you feel good about that?
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Great. Show you how it works. The third question is, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Is everyone, is everyone first? Like, oh, I don't know about the TV.
Okay, so now the next.
Seriously, if somebody, let's say they were asking the third question, do you have any questions for anything that we've done at work, right? And they say, well, I don't really want to go to TV. Right? And then, you giving them the weeds about that, or say, or you explain to them why?
That's what
Explain the problem.
So.
If they push back on the time,
Put it in the back of your mind, this is what you're not. You're not. You have your perspective. So they're not going to explain how it's going to play, but it's going to be
It's
explained.
legal, and we're going through this process.
Yeah, and but all.
So don't try to persuade them to leave the team. Great, I understand. You suck up some of these, it's like, we get some of these people during the process, and then we'll take, I'll take care of it, so they want to do. Eventually, oh, right. I have to help you with all this. You know what I'm saying? Like everything you do, I have to.
No, you're good. You're absolutely good. Okay, so let's do that.
everything
And they
else
don't actually.
except for the very minimum.
Make sure to do it.
To sum up, right, they were at the end. So now this is
When
6 months.
I'm the
They've cracking all the licenses.
it
starting
might
out
be
by starting
more
very
robust
just
than
on
I had.
it.
Okay,
So
I
that sounds good.
have
My
to
one
go
gets.
purpose of this.
Then you're gonna go look at it.
Is to get the where do I secure my license? Nothing has happened. Everything that says this one, like, it's not to get them to log on.
Because you can't,
Oh,
we are looking for the best.
So just sort of conversation. They're walking around. I work.
Is that people.
Because
That's not.
see, that's what I see myself.
Right, so
I see myself doing it all the You are, someone's like, I can't use that. This is what
I would never like a
Right. So we want that.
But it's.
how I did not know how I saw it set up.
When you right through that process.
Okay, so we need to know that
How does that?
that's what I'll later, that's auto refresh is working. Please auto refresh. So we'll know that.
It were just, it just might be different computers.
This is engaging.
Okay.
So what do we do here in the city? So what are the other? Oh, like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, the other thing too is when you haven't seen it, right? It's hard to keep it straight.
Someone goes, right, so
Look, so for Alex, so like, for Alex, for each person, for each person, you just have to go out and so there's Dorinda, there's
so what
there's
right, they gotta identify the lineup,
What's happening?
learn skills.
right, so it's an administration.
But what else are they doing?
Okay, I'm sorry, Ken, Ken, like, all right, where's Ken? And then it's pretty good, all right, boom, Ken just passed the test. I think that's it. He knows about it. And then once the biggest 6 month process, they're like, yeah, once you get them the game-based playground, right? Then they're just doing this with their people, they're learning game-based players. That's what we know level 2 for them. So when you, all you have to do is, all you have to do is, the purpose of the game players is to teach them the support system. Right, so, right, exactly. So Rhett's not teaching us right now how to teach us something, he's just teaching us.
True.
That's, so then this makes it actually instantly much more scary, because when you know. And this keeps you focused on this.
To learn is
Well, I know, I can't remember.
what it is, what it is, how it works. Through experience and process. Learning tools, other stuff, as they develop this experience. Right? You're like, oh, I know that's you learn how to say
So they don't know that,
She's saying this is.
which is, so when you're learning this right now. Take a picture of your.
Just stuff. Maybe you see Dorinda? No. So, all right. So the violation, I think, these things I break down. There's 3 questions I have to know, 4 questions I have to know, and 4 questions I have to know, right? And so they're, default questions. And so, that's really good. And the 3 questions are, would you like to know how I would define successful in 6 months? Explain it. If you use good in 6 months, would you go second about it? Yes. Right? You're trying to do it. Boom. You have the questions. And then, are you, quick questions, do you have any questions? Are you ready to get started now? Or you say, do you have any questions? No, yeah. Do you have any questions? Ask the questions. No. Or did you hear that?
Yeah, it's really, so it's really, really simple. So if we can make this.
Yeah, that's question number 2.
Right, and then we go on to all the.
Question number 3 is, do you have questions? No, right?
Okay, great, I got it.
Oh, you don't have a computer? I don't have a computer? Brett has one. Brett, let's do it ourselves.
That phone,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's very used to work, and so knowing how to do all of that is so good.
One thing I got is processing in terms of the incentives. I want to weeds on the inside. Just enough.
Yeah. Remember, then they can no, it's your ego. Anytime you give someone beyond what they can process, for your own ego and for your superiority, for your ego, you're only going to you feel smarter.
Well, and it scares me.
But
It doesn't matter then.
it doesn't matter, like, you're talking about purpose. The only
But the
reason
only way
you're
you got to a place where it doesn't scare them, and I can say this because I do it all the time, is because you provided more information. You're not paying attention to that. It makes you feel you want to get out.
well, it's traditionally the ego problem, not necessarily.
But once you take care of the ego problem, then it becomes a business. That's all I was saying.
But usually, if you say something, you're saying versus other
It's the ego
receiving.
problem first. Yeah, exactly.
That's
Once you solve the ego problem, you only have, if you can solve the ego problem, just by saying, I am sorry. Then it is only true.
Yeah, so if you then have a problem, it is.
It only says that.
Yeah.
Would you like to
And
see
the
how
yes, right? Is that you're getting
Okay,
done.
that's great. I'm gonna
What are the
Both consciously and subconsciously.
we're gonna get your license done, we get you on, we get the tax directed. Exactly what he said.
No, I know, say it again, so I make sure we're certain.
So what Brett said I really wrote down was, would you like to see, to hear that I see success as we do? And then it was, if we could accomplish these things for you, would that be a good? And then it was, does this sound like something we can offer?
Which is, do you have any questions? Which is where I was.
Do you have any questions? You know,
So,
you went.
but I don't know that, I did not purposely go to, do you have any questions, which is where I got stuck up on that process. No, you were gonna ask that, but then you're gonna finish with it.
Does this sound like something you want?
Do you have any questions? Yes or no, tell us your problems, and then it's,
Does this sound like something?
No, that's it.
So.
so you go, you say, this is something I define success, or is this for you? And the second question is, would you define success this way in the next 6 months? So, yes.
Okay,
And then
so
the
let's
third
start
is,
with
this is
the
something
initial.
we could accomplish together. Yes,
So we're going to have to go through a process with the state of California. Require
Man, that's an
a
excellent,
number of hours of
that's an
training,
excellent.
process to be that easy, don't worry, you get all that stuff done.
I'm just trying to tell you.
And we actually have
Right, and then at each, yes, their committee, but also time kind of, I get to take care of it. Because they're very, there's a conscious to actually be able to see information.
Well, and it goes from how you go, so you want to do some grades. So you're.
Okay, just try to do some.
All right, guys.
Help them retake it.
Exactly.
Did you say be quicker than that? Is that what you
So
said?
let's-
Did you, Robin, have you heard this?
And then, we want you to be able to see the special impact.
It's, first license, assets, recognition, team. Now I can't get, now I can't get out of my head, no, you can't get out of my head.
Just. I don't know.
Damn you, Babalito, and your wisdom.
I
always wonder why I sit around.
Hilarious. And then wrap
Hudson
up.
has a way about it. That's really Joel was saying.
Do you want
He's got a way. I always think when I take the lab,
You got
he has a way about it. Yes, sir.
Ready, Chris? Oh, sorry. This one I get to leverage my teacher moments. As a friend. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice.
There we go.
Oh, the number of times that I used that. So I learned a ton in that exercise. I'm hoping that everybody else did too. You know, there is, I hope that everybody has been working on, and I know many of you have, the what it is part of these quadrants, the getting started process, right? Because knowing, just being able to write it out, right, is really the first step in being able to have the conversation. But today was more about how do you deliver, right? Just like the F&A conversation we had last Saturday. The information is great, but whether it's received and acted on is in the delivery. And so I generally prefer not to spend a whole lot of time in here memorizing the what it is, which means you gotta do it on your own time. However it is that you memorize, right? The what it is. In here, we wanna focus on the delivery. Now that we know what it is, and that's what we got to talk about today. So I learned a whole bunch of things, but I want to start with what you learned. So Tony, tell me something that you just learned in this exercise.
The delivery story. I started off straight with the slide. That's how I started off with the prior conversation.
So number one was the order, right? The order and how you deliver it.
Top down.
Okay, top down. So I'm just going to do a little reminder. I love that you said top down. I love that that's language we have in here. As a reminder, there are two ways to tell a story. Generally speaking, we're taught as kids to tell a story from the beginning to the end. And we call that in here a bottom-up story, where you get the grand finale at the end. What we learned by leaving the grand finale at the end is two things. One, people are always waiting for the end, so they're actually not listening during the story that you're telling. And two, the end is usually the visionary, exciting part. But if we can give them a preview, I always think of it as like in the movies when we see the previews, right? If we can give them the preview of what's coming, one, we get them all excited and inspired to begin with. And then while we're filling in the blanks, they're not trying to figure out where we're going. We've handed them the roadmap of where we're going. We haven't told them every cool little pit stop along the way, but we've let them know that we're going from LA to Vegas, right? And that's the top-down story. And we've learned in this room that when we tell a story this way, people are receptive, more receptive to what we're saying. What else? Who else? Oscar, what did you learn?
Well, I learned why some of the things within the quadrant are very important. Like how you have to say them a specific way, or else it comes off as not complete.
So how do you deliver it to convey why it's important?
Yeah.
Right? And the beauty of this conversation, just as a reminder, because we always want to remember the larger picture, is that when you're learning to do this, right? You could be sitting in here and saying, I don't want to build a team, so I'm never going to use this. I'm not here to build a team, I'm never going to use this. But the process that we're going through when we're in here training on how to deliver the getting started is how we do everything in here. So if you're going to talk to anyone about any part of the business that we do, you're going to start with learning in our training the what it is. You're gonna learn what it means and how it works and how to deliver it in a conversation in order to be as effective as you can be. So pay attention to both the content, right? And this is one of these places where we're finding really great partnership, the content and the process, right? This is the kind of thing that you can take into your job, that you can take into building your business. And you can start to look and say, ooh, was that a top-down or a bottom-up story? What if I tell it a little differently next time, right? So there's nuggets in everything we do in here. And we don't want to miss them because we're thinking, oh, this is only if I am in the process of recruiting someone. Yeah? Or getting somebody started. What else? What else? Cindy, what'd you learn? Okay.
Really was the delivery and building the vision that I'm gonna be talking to the person about. And with me, I have to do a lot of self-talking or practice and have my conversation flow, not to tell it as just instruction, but it is a conversation with someone that likes and trusts me, so I should feel comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think you could get better at having it sound like a conversation?
Well, for me, I just talk to myself in practice.
If you only talk to yourself in practice, then what feedback are you only getting?
Why? So it'd be good to maybe grab one of my kids and say, hey, come, I want to practice something with you.
Yeah.
And that way, if they understand it, then I'm simply simple and clear to them, and I can get feedback from them as well.
Yeah. Well, and the key to the practice, right, is that if we waited until we were perfect at every single thing in here, we'd be waiting a really long time for growth, right? It's about getting out there and trying it and discovering where the pitfalls, And look, if you don't know all the quadrants yet, that's okay, right? We're talking about where we want you to end up. If you're going to start, if you decide you've got someone and you're going to do a getting started conversation, and you're just going to say, look, we've got these things, and you're just going to cover it up and reveal them, that's fine, right? Practice is the way that we get to mastery.
I was going to say, I think a big part of it is the permission question at the beginning, because that gives you the runway, I guess, to have the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I do love that. Claudia.
I learned to individualize the conversations you're having with the person.
That's good. And how? How do you do that?
Listening to, paying attention to what their interests are, what their vision, what they want, what they need.
And where their questions are, if you're practicing together.
Questions.
Where they seem to forget the most. Go back and focus on that.
Yeah, that's super. That's great. Anyone else?
Is that where you use link like that?
When you're enrolling them, yes. So the permission questions are part of enrolling. That's a good question. That's a good comment, right? So one of the things that we started to talk about in here, and again, this is sort of the advanced stages of delivery that we're getting to, right? So the first thing is, can I just get the words out, right? More by putting in these permission questions. And one of the things that I really liked, that I sort of learned better, was that there's more than one, right? So we have one here, right? You're interested in seeing what I see success for you as in the next 6 months? Yes. Okay, now I've gotten permission to share with you, and I've primed you to be open to the information. Now I've gone to the top level. Then I'm going to check in again. I'm not just going to take the first permission question and get all the way through it. I'm going to check in again. If you could accomplish these things for you in the next 6 months, is that a good investment of your time? So now we went from what I think to what you think. Now I've got that next level of permission to go into those details. And then finally, does this sound like something we could accomplish? And Wade had pointed out, which I really like, we go from I to you to we. and we're carrying people through that journey. Well, getting that permission at each of these stages in this way is the beginning of enrolling them in their own journey. Being able to also listen to what they're saying and incorporate the individualization is that's sort of like the advanced course of enrollment. So that's what that fits in. That's great. And for me, I was able to sort of write it out for the first time for myself in a way that supported the top-down conversations we have, where we are, making sure people are committing to being open to the information, hearing the information, right? And that's the real goal of the exercise. And then ending with, right? So now you're like, yes, 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 you know? And then again, it's about that casual, okay, did you bring my computer with you? Right? How do we create the most receptive environment for the information? Wade was talking about how, you know, there are times when he and I can deliver too much information, right? Because we want to get it all out. Don't even know nothing about that, right? When you've delivered too much information, more often than not, you need to check yourself and say, am I more concerned about getting all of this information out than I am about paying attention to whether the person's ready for it? Now, if you've checked yourself and you're still doing it, then maybe you need to work on your assessment ability of how that person is responding, right? Because it is true that once we are clear that we're focused on the other person, we might not be good at the cues, right? That is also a skill. What's their body language? How are they responding? Are they like, yeah, I guess? Or are they sitting up and saying, yes? Right? And you want to, over time, we are relationship people. We are in the relationship business. Over time, you'll get better at recognizing those cues. Versus saying like, I'm a robot and I have to get all of this information out to you, and I'm more focused on the fact that I have to get all this information out to you than what you're really ready for. And that's a skill. It takes time.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying. I'm just like, it's true. Or like Connie was saying, it's about assessing where the person is, or how they're going to be receptive to the information they're giving, if they are receptive.
And this is a great thing for your baseline 30, right? So one of the things we talk about in here, and this will come up as you sort of do more stuff with us, is who are the 30 people in your life, or 10 people in your life, right? Who, if they understood what you're doing and were in your corner, would make you a success, like inevitable success with those people in your corner. And we have a process for building that relationship. So for you to go to someone on your baseline 30 who's in the right place in your baseline 30 and say, I'm working on this conversation. Can I work on it with you? Can I try it out with you? Right? This is the ideal thing. And then you can say, did that feel like a lot of information? Now, you have to recognize the position they're coming from, because it's not going to apply to everybody, but these are the kinds of things that you can get together with people to practice.
There's another thing I realized too that's it's not a trap, but like we get really fired up about stuff, right? Like we can be super, super fired up about it. So we can be giving too much information because we're excited. I'm like, do you realize you get your license, you get your running back? It's like a WWE wrestler. You know what I'm saying? And I have a tendency to get excitable sometimes, and so I'll also, besides the fact that I have, you know, a rapid dominance communication style, shock and awe. Other than that, getting too much information, it's also, if I'm really excited about something, my excitement can actually start to give them too much too fast. And so that's, I think what Brett had said, that's more on me in terms of like, just because I'm excited doesn't mean that that's the right approach for them during this process. Now you want to have a little bit degree of excitement, but if you're going through it and you're super, super fired up, you may freak some people out. You know what I'm saying? And so,
yes. And so for some newer people in the room, and you know why we created this tool, because unlike was still historically maybe was one of the most excitable people, and I'm like, oh my God, you have to do this, it's the greatest thing ever. But we created this beautiful saying in order to help us, remind us about that. And what is it?
One
Because you said
degree-
the word,
1 degree more intense.
1 degree more intense. It's one of our good ones, and it works in all of your life. We have a tendency when we get excited about something to be more intense about it than the person that we're talking to. And so my fabulous husband came up with the phrase, 1 degree more intense.
Yeah.
If I only meet you, there's nowhere for you to grow. If I go too far, I've blown you out of the water. But if I see where you are and I meet you 1 degree more intense, you are more often than not, as it's an assessment, I can work with you and you will move up to meet me. And then we can work this way. And if you constantly say to yourself, what is my 1 degree more intense? What is 1 degree more intense? It will help minimize the opportunities that Wade's talking about to occur. Got lots of nuggets today. 1 degree more intense. One of my favorites. Spell it for me. and it creates such a safe language, right? Because I could be going, and Brett could look at me and be like, 1 degree. That's all I used to say. And I'm like, oh, dial it back. Dial it back. And you can use it with yourself, right? Like, you don't have to say the whole thing. You're like, 1 degree. Dial it back. That's great. Thank you.
Or dial it up.
Or dial it up.
Oh, yeah. Whatever it is.
Or dial it up. That's right. Which is actually really important, right? Oftentimes we have a hold back mentality, right? So I love that, right? Dial it up, dial it back.
Because I think that's a really good point, because if I recruit you and you are probably the most excitable person in the room, right, and I don't match that intensity, I might have a desire to be like, okay, now hold on, everybody calm down, like, whatever,
Yeah.
like, too soon. Instead of being like, okay, like, you're super excited, let me get a degree more excited and pull you forward. Let's just try to slow you down.
Yes, which is why 1 degree more intense there was not a restriction on it.
Well, the reason I said that is just because I've been in another situation where there was somebody who was just like way too intense. I was like, that's not for me. But the person who was aspirationally just Goldilocks right with intensity, I was like, that's what I actually need. That's what will help guide me. That's what I lack in this area. And so I want that for myself, right? So there's an
Yeah.
aspirational piece.
Yeah, which is right. I like the Goldilocks, right? I like the Goldilocks. That's another one you can just say to yourself, Goldilocks. Right? So always look for these little primers.
So it's like for compatibility.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, right? Well, and it's where are they gonna move, right? People rise, right? Kids rise to the space that you give them. Unless you. Anything else on this exercise before we move on? Yeah, I know, I got 5 minutes. I'm moving on. I would like you all to think about, or unless, let me take a step back for a moment. Hey, Coach, what would you like people prepared for on Wednesday?
We're not here on Wednesday. We're here
Never
next
mind. Be prepared to love everybody in your life.
Saturday.
Because I just remembered. Wow, we're not here. Okay, so Tanya's comment leads me to the next part of what we're gonna do, because I get 5 minutes, not 10, but 5 minutes to do this. Okay? Most of us in this room, I'm gonna take the liberty of saying most of us in this room are in this room because we want to accomplish something more in our lives. Not defining what that more is, most of us, and I'm going to speak for myself, I am in this room because I want to accomplish more in my life. How many of you have heard the saying that in order to accomplish more, you have to become more? A couple of us have heard that saying. So I spent some time this week thinking about what that really means. Because I've heard it too. It comes from one of my favorites. My favorite's Jim Rohn. Now it's been taken by lots of people and molded and done different stuff, but ultimately, right, it comes from Jim Rohn. And one of the things that I've been reminded of, right, the beauty of it was in my conversations with Wade, I've re-engaged in my own development and my own growth. And of course, the first thing that comes up when I do that is, if you want more, you need to become more. And I thought, okay, well, we talk a lot in here about actions aligning with intentions, right? And I think that's been one of the more impactful tools that we use. We say to ourselves, if our actions follow our intentions and we're not achieving what we want to achieve, then either the actions we're taking aren't aligned with the intentions we want, or we're lying to ourselves about the intentions and we're actually taking the actions we want to do. And so we can say to ourselves, if we're not achieving what we want to achieve, why is that? Now, in a lot of the world, we like to blame everybody else. But in here, we like to look at ourselves. And if you set up a goal for yourself, then can you achieve that goal being the exact same person you are today? No, of course not. Because to achieve that goal requires something more of you. It requires more skills. It requires potentially a change in thinking. It requires exposure to more experiences. It requires being open to stumbling and being excited about it because of what you get to learn from it. That was one of the things I learned from my husband. If you ever want to, if you ever stumble and you think to yourself, I just don't understand why this is happening. I don't know why this is always happening to me. Just knock on my husband's door. Do you know what he'll say? I'm so excited that happened to you. Because it's a learning opportunity to become more. So there are a lot of people in here with some really big goals right now. Right? We have big dreams and big goals. And Brett sort of here and there sprinkles what he's doing to become more. Right? He'll make comments like, look, we all know that the Primerica business that was run really, really well for a period of time did not require Brett to talk to the CFOs of Fortune 100 companies with 500 employees and $50 million in assets. That was not a requirement of the successful Primerica business that Brett ran. And how you talk to that person is different than how you talk to someone that you're prospecting or when you're in field training, right? On the basis of that other business. And so Brett said to himself, how do I need to grow? How do I need to become more in order to have that conversation? And what we know is that over the last year, Brett created that growth, engaged in that growth to the point that he was able to close the $53 million this week. But it's easy, because of who Brett is in this room, to assume that a year ago he could have done it. It's easy to forget that all of us in this room want to do more and achieve more, and therefore all of us in this room, in order to achieve more, need to think about how do we become more? What are the skills? What is the personal development? What are the experiences? What are the thinking? What's stopping you from becoming more? It's easy to get caught up in this. And this is really important. Knowing this alone won't get you there. Just like knowing this without the delivery won't get you there. So we get to go on this journey together to the extent that you give me permission to do that with you. And spend this next week asking yourself, what more do I need to become to accomplish my goals? Find one person who is doing what you want to be doing, or something similar to what you want to be doing. Because by studying who who that person is. How do they dress? How do they talk? What do they eat? What books do they read? That can start to move you towards becoming the person that you need to be. The next version of you in order to accomplish what you said you want to accomplish in here. That makes sense? And the very first thing is to start small. It's one of the biggest things that Wade and I are working on. Start small. I started small. I'm actually waking up a little bit earlier in the morning. And I'm going to my coffee shop for 20 minutes, and I'm reading my gym room. Start small. So that is what I empower you all with this week. Spend some time thinking about it. And every Saturday, we're going to engage, because in order for us to achieve what we want to achieve in this room, we have to both be the person that can achieve it and have the content to achieve it. So in entrepreneurs training, it's about both getting the content and developing as a person. And so we've spent a lot of time on that in the last couple of years, and then we had to get really focused on content because we were growing a heck of a lot of content. And now we're at a place that we can start to balance and marry those. That make sense? So that's what I invite you to do this week. Because ultimately, if we're all going to be successful, it has to be all about